metrics, right? You're data driven in your approach, from your macronutrients, your training volume, you put up all your workouts. What are the metrics that you would advise someone? We talked a little bit about engagement and figuring out who's the guy staring at you on the wall. What are the metrics that you would have someone who's starting this track or look at or incentivize, or then what is the needle they're trying to push?
Okay, let's go to the hierarchy of metrics. At the top, monthly recurring revenue. How much monies do you make? Because that's your job. You're a coach, right? Right underneath that, correlated, maybe beside, how many clients do you have? Under that, how many calls do you get on with people to talk to them? Right? Still not Instagram things, really. Underneath that, how many conversations do you have per day? Underneath that, now we get into like the Instagram things of like, you can look at shares and saves. I like those. Shares, saves, and comments. And then underneath that is like existing, right? How many posts do you make, et cetera, right? But we still need to look at the top, because that's what looks at our decisions, right? Because it's not really a pyramid. It's like you are always looking at all of those things, but the monthly recurring revenue is still the most important one, right? Like I work with some people who have like 15,000 followers, and they're like, yeah, I've struggled to like book consults. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not a business coach, but like I talk to my clients about business. I was like, if I had double the followers that I had, I could probably have double the clients, right? So that's like, you don't need a gigantic following to build a gigantic business. Every time someone talks about followers to me, I just tell them, what would happen if every one of your followers inquired for your product? You'd be fine.
Yeah.
Even us, I think, with Prescript, if 150 people signed up for a course, 150,000 people signed up for a course, we'd probably make it work, but we'd be fucked.
We'd make it work. Trust me, we'd make it work. I would, make it work. But I've done a lot more to make a lot less money. So we definitely make that work. But yeah, it's funny. I remember talking to Mind Pump early days, and I was like, man, you guys are like crushing it. What if you got on Joe Rogan? He said it'd be the worst thing ever. I remember talking to Sal. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, we don't have the infrastructure yet. I was like, whoa, that's 4D chess. That's business, man. I'm just thinking like, clout gains like nuts. And he's thinking like, dude, fuck that. Like, we're going to grow and scale so that when we do, the business is there to fucking capture every last dollar that comes in.
I think the difference between, well, let's say Prescript or someone, a business and a service, is a service doesn't exist without you.
Right.
Right? Like if you go on holiday, you can say, hey, Bax, coach L2 this week. I'm going on holiday. Turn off my phone. Right? And the business of Prescript still exists. Right? A lot of people think they have a business, but they have a service. It's like a restaurant. I have a service. If I don't go on my phone for one day, I will wake up to 350 messages. And it's not just messages that I can ignore on my DMs. It's like messages of people who pay me money. Yeah. So like people think they're business owners, but they're just service providers. Yeah. Which helps when we realize that this is how I look at it, is like, there's no fitness industry, right? Fitness is the byproduct that people get from the service, right? Like I go to a restaurant, it's not the food industry, it's the service industry. right? There is a food industry of like the people who make the food, but a restaurant is the service industry. And the byproduct of the service is you getting food, right? There's people who we're probably in the middle of like, we understand the ingredients of the food and the taste, right? There's the connoisseurs of food who understand all of the intricacies of the plating and everything. That's like the biomechanics people, right? The coaches who really care about that stuff. And then there's like the normal person who's just like, oh, this tastes good. That's most people. And the goal, the service or the thing that they get from the service is just results. Getting lean, getting more muscle. That's like the it tastes good of the fitness industry, right? So when we realize that most people, 95+% of people, just have a service. They don't have a business. I don't have a business.
You bring up the KPI thing, or we talk about the KPI thing, and like you kind of tiered it. And, you know, I think, you know, looking at recurring revenue clients, looking at consults, looking at number of conversations, looking at content. There's a couple ways to frame this. And I think that organization works really well. And it's not just about like, you know, we can quantify things. And I think it's useful for people to look at how things move in these quantifiable, very easily differentiated, you know, key performance indicators. When you look at it this way, from content to conversation to consult to client to money, and you know, you kind of align those two, which, yeah, hopefully if you have more clients, you have more money. If not, you're running a nonprofit, and I don't think Red Cross does coaching, and I don't think you could write that off against your taxes. So like, good for you, but also like, you know, maybe make money, which honestly is something that people undervalue. Is, you know, when you're starting, like, look, work with anyone, even if in some cases there's an exchange outside of the value of money, because you have time, right? I was told at a young age, you have 3 resources, and very rarely in your life do you have all 3. You have money, time, and energy, and very rarely do you have all 3. So, you know, if you are lacking in one, be abundant in using the other. So if you're lacking in money, use your time and energy, and you'll probably figure this one out, because there's very few times in your life where you're going to have all 3. So, but one thing I want coaches, like, especially if you're listening, especially if you're navigating this business space, and it evolves every day, right? It's evolved in the time that from fucking Junta just showing up with show me your tits to Bax rocking out of school like 7 years later and be like, hold on, I can't do hashtag show me your tits. I would strongly advise against leading with your first post as that. And now from, you know, 2020 to now, out of Bax's gray period to now in 2023 going into 2024, like, you know, you're looking at, you know, a new landscape. I would urge coaches that the number one thing, and this is so true because it's true in almost everything, is when we start to objectify things, which means we can count them and we can, you know, they're qualitative, is the number one driver that's going to push your objective qualitative metric is your subjective interpretation of effort and attention and awareness. If you write better posts and you work on sound bites, if you work on the ideas that you are thinking about, because look, one of the biggest things, you know how all of this started? Like, all of this started was I read an article from a guy that I thought was retarded. And I was like, this guy has a ton of followers. He's a chiropractor. He works with like CrossFit athletes. He's making a ton of money. I'm some angsty kid with a shit ton of debt. Fuck this guy. And I was like, well, what are you going to do about it? Right? Like, you got a problem with someone in real life. It's like, you just fucking square up. But it's like, well, I had this enemy now. He had no idea. I told him about this years later, and I thanked him, because like, now I was like, dude, you were really the impetus. Your dumb thought on squatting and athletes pissed me off so much. I'm like, I'm going to start a company that I'm going to work for forever. So fuck you. Oh, that'll show you, motherfucker. And I was like, all right, well, how do I can't square up with this guy. He's pissing me off. Well, how do I square up? It's like, well, an antidote to a bad idea is a better idea. And I started writing. And then in the process of writing, you know, what turned out being the L1 manual, but in the process of, you know, writing however many captions I've written in my life or how many articles, I start to realize like, oh, wait, I have like really conflicting ideas. And I think like, if I put these 2 paragraphs together, it is not logical that this came from the same brain. So I had to sit there and be like, well, how would I think about this? Like, in what context is this true? And what context is this true? And then I started to like practice the delivery, right? And then the delivery practice, sometimes it was, me writing it, and I would write it and go, okay, fuck, that doesn't make sense. Scratch that. And then I would go on like a live or a story. Or then when I first started, it was like Instagram just moved to like 60-second videos, or maybe it was 15-second videos. And I was like, the function of the core is to resist force through all three planes, sagittal, frontal, transverse. It's probably best to argue. And everyone's like, it got like pseudo viral because everyone's like, yo, listen to this auctioneer talking really fast about core shit. No one knows what I was talking about. But then over time, it was the delivery. And look, if you get better at writing content and you take it seriously, because it's you showing up to work, it's you saying hi to people every day, and you think about it qualitatively, right? And not just like, hey, I'm going to put this up today. It's like, well, I'm going to use this as an opportunity, as a soundbite to provide value. Because I think like people don't fundamentally understand what providing value means. Providing value means helping people who aren't you. So like you watch, and I mean, how many times did you and I send posts back and forth? And we're going to say none because we're consummate professionals, but then we're going to wink and be like, yo, some posts we see are nuts. Because it's like, yo, if you want to jerk off, just go in the bathroom with a wet towel. Like, don't do it on the internet. Because like this mental masturbation shit, like it ain't it. The delivery and understanding, like, look, value is taking a customer, a client, a follower from a current state to a desired state. That is, you are the bridge between that. Or if you can be valuable. And it's like when you understand, like in your cases, you became the pain guy in real life. Current state, in pain. Desired state, out of pain. Okay. Now, then as you started posting content higher end, before you realized your niche was coaches, it's like people are like, hey, I feel kind of dumb, but I want to be smart. Bam, Bax.